guys. So, like I said, we're looking at the safest top 10 characters to take to T9. This is going to be characters that you're going to be using in multiple modes that are going to be very easy to make those decisions. We're not talking about Delta runes. We may point out a couple Delta runes here, but we're specifically talking about the 10 safest characters. So a lot of people have asked me this: who should I invest in? Who should I go through? And it's gonna be based on a couple questions here. So I'm gonna ask a couple questions, and then you guys will have to think, what is the game mode that I like most around DSA, right? If I am all about PvP, if I am all about raids, if I am all about PvE content, club conquest, things like that, that's going to make your decision matter the most in where you want to go with these T9 characters. So if you look at PvP, you've got a lot of really great characters out there, but some of those characters you may not use in other modes. So I'm going to give an example of somebody like Ralph, right? Ralph is really good, but if you look at him in other modes, he's not so great in raids, not so great in some of the other areas. So you may not want to have him at the top of your list, but he is a great T9. So with that in mind, I've broken these guys down into a couple different categories. And again, of those categories, we're looking at just the top 10 that I believe are the safest characters to go after as a T9. So we're going to start with the first category, and that category is going to be pretty obvious. The category is going to be legendaries. And so legendaries, yes. We know that everybody loves the legendaries. Everybody hates the legendaries. But when it comes down to it, legendaries is going to be an easy way to invest your resources and not regret those resources. Now, we've all talked about, we talked about Ralph a second ago, but there's definitely a couple here that I think are really great investments, and I'll kind of explain why on each of these as well. And the first one, and I honestly think this is probably the best character to T9 hands down in the game, and that's going to be Beast. So Beast is one of those characters where he's good in everything. He's good at Sorcerer's Tournament on defense. He's good at Sorcerer's Tournament on attacking. He's very hard to deal with all this turn meter manipulation. And he's really good at rates. He does his double attack, his 4 attacks. And when you take him up to T9, you're just going to be doing a whole bunch of damage with Beast. He's got a Delta investment. So again, I'm not going to go into too many details around Deltas with all these characters, but he's got an easy Delta investment on his basic to where he's going to be doing upwards of 24,000 damage in the raids on every single basic attack. So if you think of his basic attack, Bell's call to do his basic attack, Triton's call if you're putting him in the team to also do the basic attack. Again, Beast, he's a beast, and he is definitely going to be one of your best ones to invest in. He's used in every game mode. You won't regret that one. So kind of on the same lines, I'm going to call out Herc, and I know there's a lot of bad feelings about Herc. I don't like Herc that much either as far as going against him, but if you really look at it, your Sorcerer's Tournament, right, where you get gems on a daily basis to stay in the top 5 of your tournament, you look at PvP, he's just so hard to deal with. He's pretty good in the raid, right? He's not a monster when it comes to raids, but he's definitely a damage dealer. You can stick him on a team, stick him with the Sensational 6. He's going to get you there with Empowered, and that's one of the things. I think that Herc is a very, very safe T9. You won't regret it. And same thing with Beast. He's got that basic upgrade. Give him the extra 50%. He's a multi-hitter, so his basic is not just one time, it's 3. So technically you're getting that 50% multiple times. So I think Herc is a really, really great investment at T9. Very safe investment. You won't regret that either. So sticking with the legendaries, we've got another one, and the other one's gonna be Maleficent. So Maleficent's one of those that, again, I really like Maleficent. I think that going to T9 doesn't necessarily make her insane. It definitely helps. And again, the reason why I'm throwing her in here is she's on so many different teams. So if you look at Sorcerer's Tournament, she's starting to kind of mold some of the meta. And I don't think that she's as a have to be on every single team, but using her leadership does shut down some things like Baymax's taunt that a lot of people use in Sorcerer's Tournament. It affects the Sensational 6. So if you think of Club Conquest or even Sorcerer's Tournament, if people are still using the Mickey leads, this is one of those things where she's really good just to get that extra life, the extra damage, especially with her dragging. And again, if you're going to look at the betas or the deltas, she does have her dragon upgrade that's pretty insane when it comes to PvP. But it's just one of those things where if you're looking at Sorcerer Tournament where you're going to get your daily gems, you're looking at your raid teams. Maleficent is on one of the best, if not the best raid team with Ian. So giving her that extra little bit of damage, speed, and all that good stuff is just really going to help you with that particular team and damage to help your club continue to do these raids each time. So the last legendary, and this is the one that I'm not sold on, but I do think it's a safe investment. This one's going to be Ursula. So Ursula's one of those other characters where she's really good in the raid with the when you look at her on the villains team, right? She's got a double attack that she's doing off her basic. She can polymorph if you're using her on the villains team against Tornado. It's one of those things. And yeah, Melee, to your point there in the chat, Ursula isn't technically a legendary, but she does fall into that same category, legendary adjacent. Thank you, Lori. But yeah, so it's one of those things where very, very good that she's a good investment. She's going to gain life, she's going to gain speed, damage, all around. And again, used a lot in Sorcerer's Tournament. So one of the big things, like I mentioned before, when you try to figure out where you want to put your investments, Sorcerer's Tournament, your defenses are always a great place for investments because this is going to give you back gems every single day. And as long as all these characters are really on your raid teams, you're also going to be in a good spot, which is why they've made it on this list, because all of them are essential parts of the top 5, the top 6 raid teams that you're going to want for Olympus. So the next thing, so right, there's a lot of legendaries out there. There's Elsa, there's Baymax, there's Ralph, right? There's Mickey and so on. I'm not saying that these characters are terrible. I'm just saying that these characters are starting to get used less and less, or they're very, very niche characters to where when you look at them, their bang for their buck on taking them to T9 is probably not worth it compared to some of the other characters we'll talk about when you're putting them in priority. So there are some other ones. There are other characters we may talk about in a little bit that are honorable mentions and things like that. But for the most part, when I look at legendaries, these 4 stand out. The other ones are great. But if I had to choose, and I had to choose my 10, these are the only 4 legendaries that I think actually make in the top 10, whereas some of the other ones may be in that top 15. They may be in that top 20. So again, when we look at honorable mentions, I'll definitely talk about those in these other categories. So next category that I want to look at is your damage dealers. So your damage dealers are another really good part of your teams, whether it's your PvP team or specifically your raid team. And if you guys know me, you all know that I'm all about the raids. That is my thing. Raid is what I love to do. And so when I look at these damage dealers and I look at these characters, I'm trying to think of how do you get the biggest bang for your buck. And this is where you can look at these characters. They prop up raid teams. They really help do a lot of damage. And the first one on this list is definitely Moana. So Lori, you called it there. Moana is one of those characters that is just going to be so good with damage dealers. Taking her to T9, again, going back to deltas on her basic, it's only 25. It's not 45 like all the legendaries. It's only 25. And she's going to be doing so much damage with that double slap when it comes to the raids. I mean, I was getting her up to 55k, I think, per slap. So over 100k in one hit against some of these titans. So again, really, really big damage. The biggest thing here is it's not just one attack. It's not just hitting once, it's hitting twice. It's hitting 3 times with Beast, Herc, those kind of things. And that's where you're going to constantly be getting those big damage dealers and the big bang for your buck when you take these guys up to T9. So it's one of those things where when I look at damage dealers, I'm looking at characters to where you can add that little bit more to them, and they're going to take your raid team from being, barely empowered to easily empowered. And Insomniac, just like you're saying, Moana, putting them on a team, she can empower them so easy as you go there. So again, it's very interesting to see how you want to do those. So the next one I'm looking at with damage dealer is Hades. So same kind of thing with Hades. You look at the team. How can you empower your raid teams a little bit better? If you guys have used like Machine Gun Hades or any of those teams, you'll notice that you can get empowered pretty quickly. But how do you keep doing the damage beyond that? How do you keep going above and beyond? And really on that team, you know, Ursula's going to do her big empowered damage, but Hades is where all your damage really comes from. And if you guys don't know, if you take Hades, you know, so a T8 Hades, you're doing about 8K, 9K damage each hit, 7, 8K damage each hit. If you take him to T9, you get to like 9K, close to 10K. If you add his basic, it's his basic delta. Again, it is a 45 like the legendaries. Not sure why, because he's not legendary, but when you do that, he actually goes up to over 12K per hit. If you think about that, that's 3 hits when he's empowered. So 36K every single time he hits. It's pretty crazy. And he does it on his hit. Furlough can call him. Pain and Panic can call him. It's just a whole bunch of damage as you go through there. So, you know, again, it's one of those things where, you know, Hades is really good there. Hades is really good also in PvP. So if you're using your villains, you throwing it in with the mythical villains, Pain and Panic, Hades, Miguel, all those characters put together, Ursula, you get some really, really crazy damage even in PvP. So, you know, you're looking at how do I invest in these teams. The legendaries are going to give you a lot of your PvP team already. So it's those adjacent players, right? Who are the adjacent players for your Sorcerer's Tournament? Who are your adjacent players for your raid teams? What are the raid teams that need that little bit of extra? And there's usually one character on every team that you can bump up, and it's going to bring that whole team up a whole nother level. And so Moana and Hades really do that. They're going to bump it up a little bit more, especially if you're going to invest those little bit of deltas to take their basics up. And even things like the combustibility with Hades can shoot it up even more than that. And like you guys are saying in chat, like Moana is also really good because she's oceanic. And if you guys don't know, Guest did some videos and streams before. Oceanics are used the most out of any character type in this entire game. When you also include the fact she's adventurers, which is going to help you with towers like the Gargoyles Tower, she's actually one of the most used characters in the game for any event. So there's a lot, right? Princess, you've got her on the Princess team, you got her on the Rapunzel Tower. There's so many. Actually, that's wild. The Furlough Tower. There's so many tags around these characters where you're going to be able to use it a lot. So again, just trying to show, like, if you're going to use a T9 character, so far these are kind of 5 of those. Now I'm not putting these in any order. That's the other thing. I don't want to put them in any order because I think everybody's teams are going to be different. Everybody's raid teams, everybody's Sorcerer's Tournament teams, you're going to put them in any order. And again, there's probably going to be some other ones that we're going to talk about at the end with honorable mentions that may also be on your guys' list. So let me know in the chat, who do you also think should be on this list? Because the next category I'm looking at is utility, right? So we've looked at legendaries. Good all around, great investments, just big, huge toons that do a lot of stuff. I've looked at the damage dealers, right? So big damage dealers, Hades, Moana. Again, we've already looked at Beast and Herc. They also kind of fit in that category as well. But now we're looking at the big utility toons. So the characters that are really going to drive up your teams, whether, again, Sorcerer's Tournament, PvP, raids, whatever it may be. And the first one on this list is Tiana. So again, I know we're talking about damage, and now here's where you're going to see these other characters that can really set a team into a different level. And if you haven't gone up against a Tiana, used a Tiana just going up to T9 is really good. She adds speed, she adds health. It's just a really, really great toon, and she can make any raid team pretty much empower a Titan just by drawing all that extra time. If you mess with her in Sorcerer's Tournament, if you mess with her in PvP, she is just so great at shutting down Maleficent. So now Maleficent can't charm the first charm, shutting down Ursula so Ursula can't polymorph. I mean, her throwing out the gumbo pot right at the beginning to where now, just like the Baymax, that's what you're having to hit first. She's just great. She's a great character. If you team her up with Moana, so you got the Tiana Moana combo, it's insane. You get somebody kind of semi-low, she'll call Moana if she's the only princess to smack them down and kill them. This is one of the things where Tiana just excels in all these different areas, even if she's not doing damage, because she doesn't do damage. She cleanses, she helps, she does a lot of things, but damage is not really her thing, and every character doesn't have to do damage. So that's why I really love Tiana here on the utility characters, along with Frank. So again, you guys know Frank was my second T9. So Frank, Lily, Frankenpants, that was the team that I got behind so hard with Moana. And and that is one of those things where Frank is amazing at T9 with his leadership. So again, if you're not going to have the deltas for his leadership, he may not be as good, but I think that one of the things with Frank is if you've used Frank, you've used Lily, they can do a ton of damage when they're going out there. When you get his leadership, the crits that happen, the speed that happens, like taking that adventure team against a Titan and being able to empower a Titan before they take their first team is just insane. It's just insane. So again, I'm not saying that, when you're looking at the level, you're looking at the order. I'm not saying Frank is any higher than any of these other toons. I'm just saying that if you have Frank, if you're going through there, he is a safe investment. And that's the one thing I'm wanting to make sure hits home. This is not the best. This is the safest investment. Something you will not regret by doing any of these guys up to T9. Again, I think there's a lot of sleepers. I think there's a lot of other characters, but Frank definitely helps all the adventure teams when he comes in there, and he's just really good. The water, backside of water can shut down teams when you remove all of their stuff, and then kind of continuing through those. So moving on from utility toons, and I've got a couple of those questions we're going to talk about in just a second when we get to honorable mentions. But when I go from utility toons, I've got two more, right? So we're at 8 at this point. I've got 2 more for our top 10, and these are going to be our raid monsters. So when you're looking at these characters, they're going to really help you when it comes to raid and really get you over that hump. And the first one's going to be Eve. So we talked about this a little bit earlier in the stream. So if you guys like this content and things like that, check me out on stream. All these guys right here in chat, that's what they're doing. They're hanging out with me on stream. So definitely check that out. Come hang out with me. But Eve is just amazing. Eve does massive damage. And realistically, you want to get her to T9 in order to do that damage. So a TA Eve, sure, you can get 1 million damage. You can do a lot of damage. And I'm not saying that's not a lot. But when you get her up to T9, you're going to be hitting that 2 million damage, that 3 million damage. And what we just saw was a 4 million damage run, or very close to it, posted up on the team. So again, T9 Eve is just amazing. Really great investment. You won't regret that investment when it comes to the raids. Now, again, raid monsters, she's not going to be in your next PvP team. She's not really going to be on that sorcerer's tournament. But when it comes to raid, if you want a very good, investment, she's going to be good in there. So the last one, and you guys are asking, you guys are trying to guess. It is not Ian, and I know that may surprise some people, but I'll talk about Ian when we get to kind of honorable mentions as we go through. But Sully is going to be the next one. And the reason being, Sully at T9 can do more damage, and as long as you understand how to do that, how to do his attacks and manage his damage, you can hit so hard with a T9 Sully to where even if you don't have Wendy, even if you don't have some of these other characters on the Sully team, you can get 1 million damage. You can get 800,000 damage. And so this is one of the reasons why a T9 Sully is really going to help you. Now, you guys mentioned Ian. The problem with Ian is if you take Ian to T9, you actually start to risk the ability of almost getting them empowered to too quickly. So again, Ian is a very great, when we talk about honorable mentions, which I'm going to go through now with the different sides, Ian is a great raid monster honorable mention because you can manage it if you can properly manage it. But if you start to T9 that whole team, so Maleficent, Ian, and so on, you're going to get to be really close when you know hit the big button to go off, and you may have to forfeit a good many times just because you're doing too much damage. So it's the same way. It takes a little bit of time to get used to him, but he does really help. Other utility tunes, I'm going to kind of go backwards at this point. Other honorable mentions with utility tunes, we mentioned this before, is somebody like Mickey. So Mickey being a legendary, I don't think he's amazing at going to T9, but I will add that he is pretty good at T9 because you don't need any deltas. So his Disneyland Forever is really what you go around there, and he's doing so much damage with that, even just the T9. So again, I would not say he's my safest top 10, but he is probably on the adjacent. He's probably in the top 15, probably in the top 20 of characters to take up to T9, just because he can help you with some of that. But just kind of keep that in mind. He's not going to make the top 10 list in my mind. And again, all these choices are what I think, also based on just kind of talking to some people in the clubs and things like that. But I do think that there is a lot there's a lot of characters that are just on the outside of this top 10 list. And I'm going to be doing more lists as we go through of, best Delta investments, best, sleepers that are out there and different things like that. I think the other honorable mentions I wanted to kind of talk about were the damage dealers. So there's a few other really big damage dealers out there. If you look at stuff like that, with Donald, I think Donald is amazing. You get him to T9, same thing. His basic delta is only 25. He does a ton of damage. The only problem I have with Donald is he doesn't anchor a team. He's usually working with Herc. He's usually working with a Davy Jones or something like that. So I think he's really good, but he's not an anchor of a team, which is why he didn't make the top 10 here. And Hades and Moana are anchors of teams. So that is the reason why, I look at some of that being where they're just on the outside. And I think that Ralph kind of fits that too. I think Ralph is so good when it comes to PvP. I think Ralph is really good when it comes to Sorcerer's Tournament. But when I look at the whole thing of DSA, right, where your rewards are and things like that, your raids are where you get a lot of your rewards. And then you look at something like Sorcerer's Tournament being your second place where you're going to get rewards. And I think that Ralph is great, but I don't think Ralph is a mandatory. I think you can build teams without Ralph and still do fine. My team in Sorcerer's Tournament does not have Ralph, and I've literally sat in second place for the last 6 months and just defended off people nonstop. So I think there's a lot there. And yes, I actually forgot about that. Merida is also on my damage dealer honorable mentions. I actually have a T9 Merida. I actually use my T9 Merida, but she's definitely one of those that's also on that damage dealer honorable mention. So there's a lot of other characters out there that are still used, that are still great, but I just wanted to kind of highlight 10 that I think are the safest, right? I'm not saying best, the safest characters that you're not going to regret taking to T9.